not going to get too much done this week because I have to be in the city 2 days. But I am still playing with these lamps, and I was able to talk to my certifier. And unfortunately, he's injured himself at the moment, so he's not traveling to do inspections, but he'll get in touch with me when he is. But I did ask him about lamps, and he said basically the indicator, the flashing, has to be clearly identifiable. So I've kind of been looking into this, and you kind of go down this entire rabbit hole of what different sorts of lamps there are, and the different wattages and the different sizes and the different bases. Turns out there are standards for all of these. There's an organization called the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, and they actually have a list of all the different lamps, what they're for, what the wattages are, and what the bases on them are. So what the certifier said is, if the indicator and the side lamps are in the same housing, typically you would have the side marker as a 5-watt bulb, which is the legal requirement, and you would use a 21-watt for the indicator, which will give you enough difference in brightness that it's clearly visible. The problem I have is these particular lamp housings are using what are called wedge bulbs. I need to undo that screw. It's a bit tricky with one hand. Let me just... So these are wedge type bulbs, and it's using the same holder for both bulbs. And this is what one of those wedge bulbs looks like. This is what it came with. This is a 16-watt amber bulb. The size of the bulb, well, this bulb is called a T15, and the 15 is the diameter of the bulb. Same with this. The smaller one, this is a T10. The T15 and the T10 bulbs use the same base, and the base has a particular size as well. If we look at the little article, it doesn't have a sensible name, so the base that they're using is a W2.1 times 9.5D. The 9.5 is the width of the base, and I guess the 2.1 is the width that way, the shorter width. It turns out that the highest actual wattage bulbs you can get that will fit this are 16 watt. And they do a strange thing, which is this bulb is marked 16 watt. This bulb is marked 21 CP. And that's how they kind of get around it, I think. And if you actually look at the packaging of these clear lamps, you can see it says 21 CP wedge, T15. And I looked up several of the manufacturers, the ones we can get here. So Nava, AC Dalco, and there's another one that I've forgotten the name of, but these are big brand bulbs, and none of them have any sort of T10 or T15 bulb above 16 watts. So what they talk about is the candle power, which is the CP, and they call this a 21 CP bulb. If you actually measure the current, like if I hook it up to my power supply and measure the current, it is 16 watts. So that's a bit strange. So what I've done is I've got the 21 CP clear bulb, because I figure clear is going to give me more output than an amber bulb, which is true. And I've just temporarily hooked these up to see if that's going to give me enough differentiation in the brightness. And if this works, that's what I can do, because it's okay to have white light at the front. If it isn't, I have to go back to my other plan, which was fitting a new bulb holder in here. But I'm going to use a dual filament bulb, because you can really easily get 5 watt and 21 watt BA15D type bulbs. Dirt cheap, really easy to get. I like them a lot better than these wedge style ones, which are much harder to find. So I've ordered some holders to do that. And again, I would just make a new plate to go in here, fit that new bulb holder, and fit pretty standard 5/21 watt bulbs. Those are the sort of bulbs that are used in stoplights. So if they're bright enough for a stoplight, they're going to be bright enough for this. But if we... Again, the camera kind of cheats. So you don't really get to see the difference. I mean, you can see this one is clearly more visible or more different. I still don't think that's enough. I would like it to be brighter, which is why I think I need to use a real 21 watt bulb, not one of these 16 watt but 21 candle power. It seems strange that they do that, and it took me a little while to figure out what that meant. I had to do a bit of searching. I have also ordered some LED bulbs because they're going to be way brighter than incandescents, and maybe that's the way to do it. But it's getting dark outside. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to come out here during the day. It needs to be visible from 100 meters away during the day in sunlight, so I didn't get a chance to test that. But I think I'll probably take this outside now, set it up outside, and have a look from about 50 meters away and see if it looks like it's an indicator. This is just way too dim, so you can barely tell that that's changing. This is better. Like I say, a proper 21 watt bulb I think would be the way to go, in which case I do need those new bulb holders. As well as poking around with bulbs, I did go out yesterday, got more welding gas, so hopefully I can finish off the diagonal guard stays. But also I've been ordering lots of little bits and pieces from China lately, including the replacement motor for my little cordless drill. I've had this drill for ages, and it's done well. Survived all my time in the film industry, a couple of years there, which is why it's all labelled, because you have to label all your stuff, otherwise it disappears. And the motor, even if I think it's a knockoff motor, but it fitted, seems to work. I just replaced the gear on the end. I pulled that off the old motor, stuck it on this one, and it's back to working again. This drill is actually quite good. It's not very big and it's not very fast, so it's actually quite good for doing sort of power tapping of things, because it goes quite slowly. So that's good. I'm pleased I was able to fix that, and I can just throw the rest of this out. Yeah, the brushes on that were completely gone. And I've been looking at pictures of original Brooklands. I always want to do quotes around original because they've all been so modified. I think it was only really the factory race cars that had the diagonal bracing, and then a lot of the other bracing you see seems to have been added later, including the car that a lot of this car has been based on, which was 8075. Originally it didn't have the diagonal bracing, but later on it obviously had it added. And on that car, it looks like there are special little brackets up here, but I've no idea what they actually look like. I can't get any really good close-up pictures. I think what I'm going to do is I will make a little plate that kind of goes in here, 2 screws on the side here, and it'll bend under the guard, and this will weld to that. Because I've got the turnbuckles in here, I can just have this end fixed, so it'll all be nice and clean. Just bolt on there, and that just puts a little bit of tension on these to stop them rattling around. And again, looking at the original pictures, there's all sorts of different guard mounting methods. So the factory used different ways of doing it. These sort of mounts are one style. I believe there are different sorts of headlamps as well that will bolt directly to the top of these. Everything varies. So, but I think I didn't really want to bolt it to the top face. I didn't want an extra couple of bolts there, but I think on the side there, 2 slightly smaller bolts will look fine. and that'll be nice and unobtrusive, but actually do something. Help stop these rattle around, because they are going to flex. I haven't even cut out the metal for the other side of the door yet, but I need to do that. And I did look at if there are other alternatives for this. This stuff isn't fiberglass. This stuff, they call it sort of lava wrap. It is still prickly, and they do still suggest you wear gloves and things, but there isn't really anything else you can use that's suitable. This seems to be the best sort of stuff. So I think that'll be fine. I did realize that the splinters I got, so this stuff irritates me. If I rub against it, you end up with like a red rash, and I think that's just from all the little sharp spiky bits on it. But actual splinters came from the asparagus fronds, of all things, in the garden. I was just cleaning up in the garden, and asparagus, you let it go to seed at the end of the season. You get these big ferns that come off it, and those are quite spiky, and I get splinters from those. I also had a look at trying to figure out what sort of stainless steel this is. Apparently, I'm pretty sure it'll be 304 stainless steel. That seems to be what they use for kitchen type equipment and splashbacks and that kind of thing. The two most common kinds are 304 and 316. Neither are really magnetic, so you can't test them that way. I think you might be able to grind them and notice a difference in the sparks, but I can't remember exactly how that works. There are machines that will do it. I think that's how scrapyards and metal selling places actually do it. There's some special machine they use that scans it. And apparently there is another test you can do where there's a solution, a test solution, and you put a drop of it on there, and then it looks like you use a 9-volt battery to run current through it, and I think the color of the drop changes depending on what sort of steel it is. I should probably look that up. It's probably the sort of thing that'll cost me $2 to get from China, but at least then I would know. I did try, the other thing I read was 304 is more reactive in concentrated hydrochloric acid, and I do have some of that, but it's not exactly concentrated. It's just stuff for cleaning concrete and similar things like that. So I did put a drop of that on this, and it didn't really seem to have much of a reaction at all, but I think it's because the acid isn't very strong. Like I say, I've got a couple of days in town, so it'll be back to things on the weekend, and I think the bike is now dripping a little bit, just a tiny amount, and it's around the oil pan gasket, but I probably do need to go around and just tighten that up. Now it's had a little bit of running and a few temperature cycles. I did actually go out for a test ride up and down neighbour's driveway again in the weekend. I just didn't bother filming any of that. I'm not doing anything particularly exciting. I'm just trying to get used to it and get the hang of it and get the feel of it riding at low speed and not falling off, basically. Changing gear on this is surprisingly easy. You'd think it'd be hard. You do have to stretch a little bit to reach the handle, but it just slots in and out of gear, no problem. So that bit's easy, and the clutch seems a bit better now as well since I've adjusted it. That seems a bit easier as well. But yeah, just a short update this week. The weekend again, I'm just packing up. I had a fairly busy week at work, in town a couple of days, and the weather was terrible. They actually sent most of us home early on Thursday, because there were weather warnings, but I got home okay. But this morning I was working on something else, but this afternoon I got to work on my diagonal stays, and these aren't bolted in place, but they are at the moment actually tensioning the guards. These of course are turnbuckles, so that you can rotate always loosen. Have either end fixed and just turn the middle, so it's got a left-hand thread on one end and a right-hand thread on the other, so when you turn it, both ends either pull in or push out. But what I ended up doing was making a little stainless steel plate, because this is stainless steel rod, that curves and matches the inside of the guard, and then I curved the end of the rod to match that and welded that entire length. And this actually took me quite a long time, a couple of hours, to get everything just right, so that that fits up under the wired, up against the inside of the guard and up against that wired edge, so that when you do put the tension on this, it kind of locks it in place. There's a little bit of tension on it, but you can see it tightening up the guard, so hopefully that'll be enough to stop them rattling. I still need to drill the holes, and there'll just be a couple of little screws through there. The headlamps are on these little brackets, so I can sort of rotate them in and out to adjust them, to get them spaced away from these. You don't want these rattling. I suppose you could always put little bits of rubber tube or something on it, but it's easy enough to space them out of the way. And to do that welding, I used TIG and I used stainless steel. I did try TIG brazing initially and found that wasn't working too well, and then I remembered I actually have some TIG stainless steel filler wire, so I tried that, and this was I think this was my second attempt once I got the settings right. It's not pretty, but it's going to hold. It's penetrated all the way through. So that's how I ended up doing it. The stainless steel, when you're actually welding it, looks really nice, really clean, really easy to see weld pull, which is very silvery. But then when you finish welding, it's just all kind of black and horrible. So you have to clean it up, wire brush it, and clean up the weld a little bit. But I think those will work fine. I don't need to paint them, and they're not going to rust. So a couple of holes in there, that's all I need to do there. I do want to put the exhaust back on. It's been sitting off for ages. I think spiders have taken up residence inside the muffler, but I'll start the car and evict them pretty quickly. And I want to make a little stainless steel bracket for the back of the exhaust that'll clamp around here. So I'll have a look at that tomorrow. And I might do some more TIG welding and finish up this door. Just finish up the little pieces that need doing. This top corner and that little bottom corner in the front where there's a bit of a hole. I just want to fill that hole. And then I guess start on the other door. The other thing I noticed, or probably re-noticed, I'm sure I noticed this before, my bonnet hinge isn't exactly central. It's a little bit off this way. It's not obviously off, but if you look very closely, you can see it should be over that way just a little bit. But because these holes go all the way through the firewall and the frame, and all the holes are already drilled, I'm not going to fix that. I'll leave it how it is. It won't matter. It might look a bit odd, but it's a handmade car, so there's going to be little odd bits and pieces like that, and I can live with that. That's no problem. But I did rub a little bit more Penetrol on top of the guards because they're already starting to surface rust a little bit, probably just where I've been handling them, and the Penetrol's come off. Also where I cleaned it up when I filed these holes square for those bolts. Whoops. But I'm pleased with how those diagonal stays have come out. They look quite good. Sunday, I'm out working on the Riley. I've just been welding up the corners of the door. So this corner and this bottom corner, I'm just waiting for it to cool down, and then I'll be able to grind and file and sand that. I have mounted the diagonal stays, little screws that hold them. They're under tension. They're not fully tensioned up. If you tension them up too much, it just bends everything, of course, but there's a little bit more tension to go on those. They've come out really well. I like that the little screws are on the side and not on the top. I still haven't done the exhaust. That's the next thing to do, so I might start doing that now while the welds are cooling down. I want to see if I can get away with just one mounting bracket down the end there, but it may be a good idea to fit another one somewhere along here. I'll have a look at some pictures and see what they actually do on the proper ones. The gaps on the door welded up, so a little bit at the bottom and just the top edge there. I just sort of welded a piece on. Took me a couple of goes actually, because you weld a piece on, then you file it back, and then you file through your weld, so you have to add a bit more weld. But that's come out okay there. And I'm just playing with the exhaust. I just need to bolt the muffler back on, and then figure out the hanger at the rear. And I need to make sure there's enough clearance around the suspension and everything. But if this is fixed, this should be moving with the chassis, so this is where the flexible chassis could become interesting. Can it flex enough that the pipe is moving in relation to the chassis? Theoretically it shouldn't, because it's fixed to the engine up here and fixed to the tail down there, but there could be enough twist in it that it actually comes up and whacks the bottom of the shock absorber. That's what I'm worried about. But I need to get the muffler actually bolted back on, because you can see it's twisted. I need to rotate it and lock it down and then go from there. Just looking at my exhaust here, I think just one holder at the back is going to be enough, and probably desirable given how flexible the chassis is on this. I think if you tried to mount this somewhere else, like off here maybe, you're just going to bend things because everything moves. So this is all steel, so I think as long as it's fixed firmly to this, at this end, that's going to hold the pipe pretty rigid along this end of the chassis, and still allow plenty of room there for flex in the middle piece. I think that'll be okay. So next thing to do will be, I actually still need to pin the skin to that door once I'm completely happy with it, but then do the next door skin. The other thing I noticed when I was measuring the guards, I was trying to make sure these were sort of straight. In the end I gave up trying to measure, I just did it by eye. I think I've actually got one bracket, you can't even easily see it, but those where the brackets are aren't actually in line. The guards are the same height off the ground, and they're the same height from here to the ground and the same distance away from the front of the tyre, just these mounts are in slightly different places. But you can't even notice it. Like I say, I was trying to measure it and I couldn't even easily measure. The only way I could measure it, I was measuring sort of from here all the way down, and that's where I noticed the difference. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there for now.